Hi, everyone. I think we are officially good to go. This event recording just kicked off, which means I'm going to officially get us started. If you are here for the Taproot event on volunteer support for your 2024 marketing plan, you are absolutely in the right place. So don't go anywhere. We have so much great content for you. I've got great team members on the line. I think Megan Gillette already chimed in with an invitation to introduce yourself, your organization, your website, your LinkedIn. We'd love for you all to get a chance to network with one another and tap into one another as resources as well during this event and after the event. So please do keep those introductions coming. And I'm going to go ahead and get things rolling because I do appreciate you all sharing an hour of your time with us today. All right, so as you're all introducing yourself, I'm going to go ahead and do the same. My name is Kimberly Swartz, but you can call me Kim. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am Taproot's Senior Director of Community Engagement, which really just means I have this wonderful job of getting to design programs and experiences that bring nonprofits like you all, small businesses, together with volunteers who are really passionate about making a difference and have incredibly valuable skill sets to share with their communities. So it's a pretty great job, and as such, I get to host a fair amount of events like this one, where we hopefully will motivate you and inspire you to start thinking about ways that you could tap into Taproot resources, Taproot's volunteer network, to bring capacity building and infrastructure support to your nonprofit organizations as well. So in addition to my design work and team management work with Taproot, I started my career with nonprofits in the marketing space, really focused on email marketing, partnership development, as well as social media strategy. And I still regularly consult with organizations, many of them early stage nonprofits who are still completely volunteer run, on how they can really maximize the return on investment that they're getting. Because we all know, especially when we're working on small teams, every single nonprofit staff member or board member, you're wearing 10 different hats. And likely whoever is handling marketing at an organization is also handling fundraising and development, or they're also handling program management. And so we have to be really, practical and pragmatic about how we choose to invest in marketing activities to drive program participation, to drive fundraising, whether it's with foundations or companies or individual giving. And how we use marketing to bring in additional volunteer support. And Jeffrey, I feel you, 10 hats. Learned how to manage it during my years as a nonprofit professional, but those days when it turns into 30 or 40 hats, it's burnout. It's very real in the sector, and I know we're all feeling it. And so that's something that we're going to be digging into today is how can we free up your space to do more of the activities that you are uniquely skilled at and you're uniquely passionate about, and our communities rely on you to do more of that mission related work. We can get you volunteers who are skilled in the marketing pieces so that you can lean away from those and spend more of your valuable time and energy on your specific activities. All right, so a few logistical notes before we dive into the content. This is a webinar format, so attendees will be muted throughout, but please do keep using that chat box. You guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate all of the introductions and commentary and questions that are already coming in, so please keep using that chat box. I do have a wonderful colleague on the line, Megan Gillette, who is a senior program associate for us on the Taproot Plus team. So she'll be covering the chat box and we'll answer questions throughout. But when there's like a bigger, meatier question that perhaps many people would be interested in the answer to, she's going to share that with me. And we're at the end of today's event are going to have a nice healthy chunk of time for Q&A. So we're hoping to address all questions, but stick around to the end so that you can get responses to those bigger, meatier ones. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share that recording with all registrants by tomorrow at the latest. So during today's events, just a quick run through of the agenda. I'll give just a quick introduction to Taproot because we did have a fair amount of folks on the registration form say that they were new to our nonprofit and new to the services that we can provide and the connections with our skilled volunteers. But really the bulk of the event is going to be going through recommendations for crafting a 2024 marketing plan and then successfully executing upon it with a full list of recommended projects for marketing, communications, and advertising volunteers that can tackle those marketing plan elements on behalf of your organization. So I'll start with a little bit of a Taproot intro, but I do promise the bulk of the presentation is on the good stuff. And then, of course, at the end, we'll save some time for Q&A as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get things rolling. A little bit more about Taproot Foundation for folks who might be new to working with our nonprofits. We are a nonprofit that exists to support our fellow nonprofits, just to put it really, really simply. We were founded as a nonprofit back in 2001 with this knowledge that there's a massive resource gap present in the social sector, right? We have organizations who have the solutions to our world's most pressing social challenges, but they simply don't have the financial means, the staff capacity, the institutional support to carry out those missions to their fullest extent. And so Taproot is working to democratize access to resourcing for nonprofits, regardless of their mission area, regardless of their budget size, and regardless of the years that they've been in operations for. I know many of those barriers are put into place in traditional institution giving, and Taproot is leveraging connections with our incredible community of volunteers to try and break down some of those resource barriers and to make this a more equitable place to find the support your organizations need to succeed. So a few stats, because I know it's sometimes helpful to put a big lofty mission or vision into a practical lens. So here you can see a little bit more about how Taproot works with nonprofit organizations. As I mentioned, we're here to get you all the business support you need for free. We're a nonprofit, and we believe that nonprofits should be able to access our support totally cost-free. So anything I'm talking about today throughout the event does not have a price tag associated with it, and it never will. Since the early 2000s, Taproot has partnered with over 10,000 social change organizations and over 24,000 volunteers, totaling around $300 million in donated professional services. And we forge hundreds of pro bono connections every single week through Taproot Plus, which is our free-to-use volunteer and nonprofit matchmaking platform. And in addition to this community-led programming that flows through Taproot Plus, our nonprofit has also partnered with over 100 Fortune 500 companies through our advisory services practice, which brings talented corporate employee talent directly to nonprofits across Taproot's network. So through the Taproot Plus platform, as I mentioned, really seeking to lower barriers to entry for organizations who are just starting out or looking to take the next step. So wanted to put a slide up quickly on Taproot Plus specifically, because as I go through some of the marketing plan recommendations today, I really do encourage you to start using your Taproot account to put some of these ideas in action. So I will not be offended at all if you use that link at the top of your page to go create a Taproot account and start filling out the volunteer request form with ideas for how you want to leverage volunteers at your organization. So have me open on one tab, have Taproot open on the other tab. I won't be offended at all. And in fact, if you have any questions that you run into during the sign-up process or during the request process, it's great because you have Taproot staff members here on the line with you live that can answer questions for you. So a little bit more information about a Taproot Plus account specifically. As I mentioned, it's our free online nonprofit and volunteer matchmaking platform, and it's really the front door to accessing services through our organization. So Megan, I think, just put that banner up at the top of the screen, and we'll leave it there throughout the event so you can click in if interested. But as I mentioned, it's free to have an account, request services, and leverage Taproot's resources. And we also don't put a cap on how many team members at your organizations can have accounts. So you could go ahead and after the event today, put in a volunteer request for a social media strategy. At the same time, one of your colleagues puts in a request for a CRM audit and recommendations project. We have a virtual community of over 150,000 volunteers from the worlds of IT and technology, business strategy, HR and leadership development, marketing and communications, software development, design, operations, and much, much more. And I'm sharing this program participation info right up top because, again, if you hear about a volunteer project during the course of this webinar that your organization needs, please go ahead and immediately get that process going and ask me questions if you run into any barriers. All right. So really quickly, you and your nonprofit are able to support on-demand requests for volunteer support through 1-hour consultation sessions or multi-week in-depth projects where a volunteer works with you to create a specific deliverable. So those are kind of our on-demand options through Taproot Plus. But as I mentioned really quickly earlier, Taproot also works with many companies and foundations. And so when we have the funding available, we also do host pro bono events like pro bono marathons or speed consulting events, which is kind of like speed dating, except you're getting very valuable advice from experienced professionals. And so when those events become available, you will be notified about them through the email that you use to create your Taproot Plus account. So that's why we refer to this as kind of the front door to Taproot. All right. So now I want to get into the heart of the event because this is where we want to spend the bulk of our time talking about what type of support would be most helpful as you all are approaching your marketing planning process, whether you're just starting the planning right now or whether you have a marketing plan and are looking for ways to volunteers to support your work. So I thought it would be interesting and of course educational for me. I wanted to pause and do a quick audience poll here because I'm curious to see responses to this question before and after we talk about the intricacies of marketing planning. So gut reaction, what marketing area or specific project are you most hungry for volunteer support with? I'll, of course, use your responses to inform where I spend more time talking about project examples a little bit later in the deck. And so thanks for everyone who's comfortable sharing. And I'm interested to see if this changes when I ask the same question at the end of the event. I'm seeing a lot of grant writing fundraising. I'm seeing a lot of social media. And then digital marketing seems to be a really popular one as well. And I'm curious for the folks chiming in with digital marketing. Are we thinking about digital marketing is in like content marketing and SEO, search engine optimization? Oh, Google Ads, online fundraising. Yeah, okay. So I think the SEO is really hitting as a big one. And then Sasika is just saying all of the above. I want it all. Okay, well, keep that feedback coming because I have a ton of really great examples to walk you through. And before we get into the examples, I want to take a step back and talk through developing your nonprofit marketing plan in the first place and talk about some of the bedrock items that will help set you up for really maximizing the time and energy that you're putting into these marketing campaigns, whether it's for individual fundraising, whether it's for driving brand awareness and traffic to your website, et cetera. So let's focus in on the key elements that your nonprofit should be building into your marketing plan. So, taking us right to the very definition of what a marketing plan is, it details the strategy that your organization will use to market its products to customers during a specific period of time. When I say customers here, I know it's a little bit different when we think about for-profit versus nonprofit organizations. So when you think about your customers, I want you to think about your core stakeholders being your program participants, being your volunteers, and being your community partners. So swap out customers and put in community members instead. So it details the strategy that your organization is going to use to market its products or services or programs to community members during a specific period of time. And it details the key marketing activities slated during that period. So it's a great foundational piece that helps you direct and streamline, and very importantly, track the success of your marketing and communications efforts, making sure that all wheels are moving in the same direction. And I've worked with several organizations during their marketing planning processes. And some choose to create a marketing plan on an annual basis. So right at the top of the year, January is a great time to be thinking about your marketing plan for 2024. Some choose to do marketing plans related to certain big initiatives that your organization has coming up, like a big anniversary. I think I saw in the chat earlier, someone's getting ready to celebrate their 125th anniversary. You need a marketing plan for that, right? That's a really big milestone moment, and you want to be able to really shape your PR and email and digital marketing efforts well around that milestone. Your marketing plan could also be for a longer period of time. It could be tied to your strategic plan. And I know some nonprofits here have strategic plans that last for 2, 3, even 5 years. You could make a marketing plan that tracks back to that time frame, as long as you commit to going in on a regular basis and adapting the strategies that you're going to use or adapting the campaigns you're going to use in your marketing plan during that time. Because a lot can change over a period of 12, 24, 36 months. So marketing is one of those areas that inspiration can strike at any time, and it can strike anyone from a random article, a billboard, a conversation. So if you manage marketing and communications for your organization, I am positive that you are used to receiving plenty of feedback, sometimes asked for, a lot of times not asked for, and ideas on what your organization could be doing more of. So it's critical that we balance that endless stream of marketing requests and ideas with a streamlined roadmap of the story your nonprofit is telling, who you are telling that story to, where you are going to tell that story, and when you are sharing parts of that story. That way, you do not fall into the time and energy suck of marketing tangents that don't serve your overall org vision or your values, right? So you'll see here on the slide that a marketing plan should identify a few key items. One of those being your core stakeholders. And I spoke about this just a couple minutes ago. So each organization is going to have different core stakeholders. So this is a question you're going to have to answer for yourself. Usually, a nonprofit, one of their key stakeholders will be program participants. However, make that more specific as it pertains to your organization. I'm seeing a chat saying that youth interns are a huge stakeholder for someone. Great. If you have a specific stakeholder, instead of just program participants, you can swap that out with, young adults between a certain age range. Perfect. That's a key stakeholder. Usually nonprofits also have a stakeholder that involves their volunteers or their funders. For Taproot specifically, we have small business stakeholders, we have nonprofit stakeholders, we have volunteers, we have our staff and board, we have our corporate partners, we have our foundation funders. So we have around 6 core stakeholder groups. So answer that question first. Who are your core community members, and who do you expect to be communicating with and marketing to in this next year? Stakeholders could benefit from your program and projects. However, they could also be a part of enabling those things to happen in the first place. So stakeholders are anyone who is involved in or impacted by your programming. So that's why I mentioned things like a corporate or foundation supporter, because they don't benefit from your services, but they are a key player in making sure those services are possible. So they are still a stakeholder. So come up with your list of core stakeholders, and that's your first step of your marketing plan, is defining who you are going to be communicating with this year. The second key element is going to be your value proposition for each of those key stakeholders, right? What are you trying to convey to each of those core community members? And what action are you trying to move them to? What does your organization mean to them? What and why should they care about what your organization has to offer? So this is where your narrative and your story arc for each stakeholder type is going to come into play. So think about your value proposition. Think about what you want to mean to each of these different key stakeholders. Your third element of your marketing plan is going to be the core initiatives, or the priority initiatives or campaigns that you are executing to engage those core stakeholders. So this is where the actual project planning of, I know that we have this big event coming up in September of 2024, build that into your marketing plan. If you know that you have a marquee initiative or marquee event or milestone coming up, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying priority initiatives. Map that into your marketing plan so that then you can effectively put capacity against it. You can plan your other brand awareness moments, your social media strategy, your email strategy around these big campaign moments. So think through your priority initiatives and write those down. Get a list going. And then lastly, a marketing plan should identify your success metrics or goals that you're going to measure your marketing efforts against. This is where you need to ask yourself, to what end? Why are we devoting valuable staff or volunteer resources on these marketing campaigns in the first place? How are we holding ourselves accountable to learning from the marketing efforts that we've completed this year? A marketing plan is really fueled by your organization's mission, vision, and values, and it's fueled by your strategic plan. So if I could push any single piece of advice during this presentation, it would be this. Don't spin your wheels and use valuable team capacity on marketing efforts if you don't have a clear sense of how that marketing effort is bringing you closer to your impact goals as an organization. Just because you see other organizations on TikTok and feel the pressure to be everywhere at once because you need to build brand awareness, that's what you keep hearing from funders, or that's what you keep hearing from board members. Build brand awareness. Take that moment to hearken back to your org objectives, your organization's objectives and strategic plan, and determine, is TikTok the right channel for us? Is that the channel where our core stakeholders live and are getting information and inspiration from? Is that where we can reach people with the right information at the right time? If the answer is yes, by all means, experiment with TikTok. But if the answer is no, or if the answer is, I don't know if my core stakeholder is there, I don't know if that's the right channel, then that's a clear sign that you need to do a little bit more research on your core stakeholders first. And you need to invest in that part of marketing before you spin your wheels on campaigns that may go nowhere because they're not backed by data. So this will be a trend for me throughout the event. I'm very passionate about data-driven marketing, and I think it's so important for nonprofits to be really efficient when they invest in these types of activities. Back office activities as it is. And so this is something that I'll continue to come back to, and we can talk more about some success metrics and what examples of those might look like for different types of marketing goals. But it's really important that if you're going to invest in marketing, you have to invest in evaluating your marketing efforts. And one note that I'll make here, because I'm seeing some of the chats come through, if your organization doesn't yet have a mission statement or a vision statement, or maybe you haven't gone through a strategic planning process, I do recommend beginning there before you invest a lot of time and capacity in executing marketing campaigns or creating a marketing plan. Because as I mentioned, a marketing plan should really be it should be fueled by your organization's overarching vision and strategy. How are you changing the world? How are you solving this challenge for your community? And your marketing plan needs to be a cog in that overall machine. So don't let the cart lead the horse. Start with your strategic plan, start with your mission and vision. And we don't have enough time. I could spend, hours talking about those pieces specifically and how volunteers could assist there. Unfortunately, we don't have the time in this particular event to do that. But we do have a strategic planning webinar in early March. So Megan, I'm wondering if you could drop a link, because it does sound like that would be helpful for a few folks on the line. And we'll have more time to dig into those types of more like strategy level questions there. But for the sake of time, I'm going to move us on to this next slide, which gets to some of the promotional channels that you should be thinking about leveraging throughout your marketing plan. So we talked about those core priority initiatives that you should list out when you're building your marketing plan. For each of those initiatives, you need to be thinking about which marketing channels am I going to leverage for this initiative. So I listed some of the 5 common marketing channels for nonprofits, but please do feel free to shout out any other channels your organization will be leveraging in the chat, because I'm curious. But I'm going to start with social media. Social media is really our opportunity as nonprofits to make one-on-one, more personal connections with audience members who may become community members that we serve through our programs. They may become donors. They may become volunteers. It's a place for you to really showcase your organization's values and personality to humanize your brand. It's a huge area of opportunity, but I would remiss if I didn't say that social spaces are crowded. And sometimes it can be tough to get noticed, which means that it's really crucial that your organization has a clear vision of what goals you're going to use social media channels to achieve and accomplish this next year. And from my experience as a social media strategist in the past, I really do recommend, because I see a lot of folks saying that they're looking for fundraising, looking to drive individual giving through their social media efforts. So from my previous experience working in social for nonprofits, my top tip here is that you maintain a well-balanced diet of social content on your channels. If I went to any of your channels right now and I saw a donation request followed by a donation request, I would be a little turned off, right? I don't want to donate to your social media fundraiser unless you have consistently been on my feed, educating me on the issue that you're solving and educating me on the solutions that your organization employs. I want to see, for every donation request that you put out there, I want to see impact stats. The next day, I want to see a story of someone that your services are impacting. The next day after that, I want to see a feature of a staff or board member, right? That's what's going to motivate me to give. Educate me. Don't just ask from me. Moving on to content marketing, this is a super broad term, but it really just refers to the development and distribution of your organization's story and viewpoint, especially in the online space. So for all you who are saying you want to increase your digital marketing presence, content marketing and setting a content marketing strategy is a really great place to start. When we think about content and as a promotional channel, we're thinking about how your website and the content on your website is using keywords to maximize search engine optimization. And we're also thinking about the stories and research and resources and events your organization is creating and sharing with the community through email, social, webinars, etc. And a content strategy make sure that you always have fresh, relevant materials to share with your newsletter list, social media, potential funders, etc. So your content strategy kind of fuels everything else in a lot of ways. I also want to touch on public relations because this bucket kind of tackles this question of how are you getting the word out to a community that isn't yet in your direct marketing funnel. I'd also include media relations in this bucket, since a big piece of being able to successfully execute PR for an event or campaign is having the groundwork of research on relevant media contacts or publications. So relationship development is a big part of PR. And then email marketing. I highly recommend this as a channel that all nonprofits prioritize in their marketing plans for 2024. I conducted a fairly extensive volunteerism research effort last year, and one of the most conclusive takeaways is that email is the place people want to be notified about opportunities to support nonprofits. 91% of our respondents, and this was nearly 1,000 respondents from across the US and a few other regions around the world as well. 91% of those respondents included this channel as their top option. So when you think about how to leverage email for your organization's goals this year, whether it's fundraising, volunteer engagement, program participation, whatever it is, I would recommend not just thinking of it as a collection of just one-off email blasts, but instead as a communications experience for your stakeholders. What are they learning in each email? What's the one action you want them to take in every single email that you send? How does one email build off of the last one? How are you segmenting your email list to ensure that the right communications are going to the right person at the right time in their journey with your organization? So keep that idea of a journey, a consistent narrative for your key stakeholders in mind throughout the planning of your marketing efforts, because it applies to email, but it also applies to a lot of other sources as well, or channels as well. And then the final promotional channel I want to shout out is your people. So would be curious to see, I'm going to ask for some chat answers again. How are you leveraging your staff and board members to be ambassadors for your organization? You know, people might get really good ideas if you've done something really effective, but I am curious, sometimes I work with organizations and really do see that this is an under-leveraged promotional channel for organizations. So your closest network will always be your biggest advocates. So you need to make sure you're enabling the support of your marketing efforts with tools and structures that they need to contribute to them. So hopefully a few examples are coming into the chat. Yeah, thank you, Lauren, providing common messages for people to use, encouraging it with swag, having an invite a friend option for events. Please keep those ideas coming. And I'll also share an example from my experience as well. So I was working with a nonprofit who serves survivors of domestic violence. And so for obvious safety reasons, storytelling, quotes, testimonials, photos, it was all a challenge for their organization to gather and showcase externally, right? That just wasn't an option for them. And therefore their social media presence and their website presence, it looked really wooden and it didn't showcase the huge heart of that organization. And so they wanted to humanize their work and bring color and personality to their site. And so One pathway for that is I helped them set up a staff and volunteer spotlight series where they used a really simple survey, maybe 2, 3, 4 questions tops, to gather quotes from their team members about why they believed this work mattered, what brought them to this space, what kept them going on really hard days, and what was their vision for the future? What was their vision for what their nonprofit was going to achieve in the community? And this became their way to humanize their work externally. It gave them quotes and stories to feature on social, to add to their website. It also gave them content to use in their pitch decks and what they were sharing with funders, while protecting the privacy and the security of the women and the families that they served. So I recommend leaning into your people if there are confidentiality or security risks at play when it comes to storytelling with your program participants, because I know that is very challenging for a lot of people. So see about really highlighting the humans who make your work possible instead. All right, so please keep those ideas coming. But I want to just shift over to talking about a few more building blocks for a great comprehensive marketing plan. These are a few structural pieces that I do recommend for nonprofits to, as you're building your marketing plan, reference back to these items, because it'll help make your plan more comprehensive, more cohesive, and just have a greater chance of success at the end of the year. So things like stakeholder interviews are a great thing to do in advance of marketing planning. Stakeholder interviews are when you sit down with your core stakeholders, and that we talked through a few examples of those earlier, and you ask them about what else could your organization be doing from a messaging perspective, from a programming perspective. Usually stakeholder interviews are not just focused on marketing. Generally, they're also focused on your programming as well, and how you can be more responsive to their needs. Things like data analysis are really important. As I mentioned, I am big on data-backed marketing. And so please look at your social media analytics, look at your website traffic numbers, your Google Analytics, look at your program evaluation, the surveys that you ask people to fill out after they participate in a program or event with you. Dig into that feedback, learn from it, look into your email analytics, see what's working, not working for your community members, because those all should fuel the campaigns and the priority initiatives that you set for yourself in the 2024 marketing plan. Also, market research, things like conducting a competitive analysis or SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Those are always helpful pieces for a strategic planning process, but also things like a marketing plan. So you can see, all right, going back to that value proposition that we were talking about earlier for each of your stakeholder types, I really want to lean into this piece of our value proposition because I know that a competitor is leaning into this other piece. And I think that this is how I could differentiate ourselves, right? So knowing that competitive landscape, knowing what other people are trying, and either being inspired by it or choosing to lean away from it, all good things, but you need to study that information first. And then, of course, having something like a marketing dashboard, a place for you to have your metrics-based goals set, but also a home for you to track progress towards those goals is really helpful. Don't stress if these building blocks aren't something that your organization has invested in yet, because these activities could be some of the items that you actually include in your marketing plan. If your organization is in its early stages of marketing, then creating infrastructure could literally be a chunk of your marketing plan for the year, with your marketing goals being something along the lines of, in 2024, we seek to better understand the needs and motivations of our community members. In order to achieve this goal, we are going to conduct interviews with at least 10 program participants, or at least 5 volunteers, etc., in order to complete a thorough analysis. So infrastructure projects can be in a marketing plan. And in fact, they should be in a marketing plan. So also, if some of these items you don't have constructed for your organization, every item you see on this slide is a great example of a project you can complete with a Taproot volunteer. So I promised I would come back to that. So these are all really good examples of something with a well-scoped deliverable. You could plug it into Taproot Plus, put some more scope around it in terms of what exactly you're looking for a volunteer to deliver. And this would be a really great opportunity of something that we have skill sets to match with. And I've actually used pro bono to build some of these with Taproot volunteers. So I've personally leveraged Taproot volunteers for assistance with market research. And I've personally used volunteer assistance for creating a marketing dashboard. And I see a question about that in the chat. So just really quickly, a marketing dashboard, at least for how I've used it here and at other organizations, has been a place where I have listed the key performance indicators, the KPIs that my team is working towards for the year as it relates to our marketing goals. And it's where I've then had team members track their efforts towards each of those different KPIs. So for example, if we have a goal of increasing website traffic to a certain page by 10%, we have a team member who is responsible for plugging in monthly metrics towards that goal. And then the rest of the team has a transparent look at how efforts are progressing towards that overall key performance indicator. And that's a relatively basic one, but it could be a lot more advanced than that. So I had a volunteer to actually come in and assist with pulling those data streams together and creating a really nice looking Excel doc that the team could use for that. So hopefully that's helpful. I want to dig into, I'm just being cognizant of time, and we have around 15 minutes left. And so I want to shout out that we will share out a PDF of this deck. And in this deck is going to be a lot more project examples than we had a chance to go through. So would highly recommend scrolling through this deck after the fact, because you're going to see slides where I have project examples in places like graphic design and website upgrades and social media. And for the sake of time, we won't have a chance to talk through every single one of these slides, but it will be available to you after the fact. So I think that for the sake of time, I saw a fair amount of people chime in saying they had social media needs. So I'm going to talk through this slide, and then I want to bounce us to Q&A. So I have a chance to answer some of these great questions that have come in. But just want to reassure people, you still will get ideas in email, data, branding and messaging, graphic design, website work, etc. All right, but let's talk about social media specifically. So a few ideas that you'll see here include things like working with a volunteer to actually construct your social media strategy for the year. Again, social media strategy should be nestled in your marketing plan. So they're not two distinct items. Creating a social media strategy that achieves a 5% growth in followers across channels or a 5% growth in reach of your posts across channels, that's actually a great priority initiative to have within your marketing plan. So this is a piece of the greater pie, if that makes sense. So working with a volunteer to actually create your social media strategy for the year is a great example of a well-scoped pro bono project. Same with copywriting. If you need to work with a volunteer to just create like a stockpile of social media posts that you can just copy from a document and paste and put out on Facebook or Twitter, or I guess X or LinkedIn, that's something a volunteer could do as well. So just bring in a copywriter and say, I need you to write 20 posts that I can use to help me bring in more volunteer support or to help me bring in donations. Things like creating Canva templates is a really great way to use volunteer support. Canva does have a free version for nonprofits, which I highly recommend. I've used it myself and it's very user-friendly. You could actually have a volunteer go into your Canva account and create templates for an email newsletter, create templates for your social media pages, create templates for a deck. I mean, literally anything. I have it listed under the social media slide, but Canva templates really could apply to anything and everything you need graphics for. And a volunteer could come in, create that infrastructure for you, and then you would be able to kind of execute on customizing those templates whenever needed throughout the year. I also really love when nonprofits leverage social media volunteers for things like creating a content calendar. I think this is a great way to build your social media infrastructure because, as I mentioned earlier, with social media, it's really important to have a well-balanced diet approach where you have a variety of different types of messaging and motivations going out. And so having a marketing volunteer who's experienced with that type of varied content come in and map out a calendar for you and say, all right, you're posting about these big events throughout this week. That means you need to mix things up and you need to have a post going out directed towards your volunteer stakeholders or directed towards your program participant stakeholders. They can add that really strategic lens to your content calendar and then help you start filling in what the content will be and look like. And that project is actually pre-scoped within Taproot. So we make it super easy for you to request that content calendar once. So would highly recommend. Okay. I think at that point, I'm going to stop talking because I may be overwhelming some folks with information and I want to switch us over to Q&A. So we do have a chance to dig into some of these great questions. But again, all of these ideas will be available through the deck. And as I'm catching up and scrolling through some of the open questions, as promised, I'm asking this question again. After learning about the finer points or the building blocks of a marketing plan, after hearing about those infrastructure pieces, has your opinion of what you're most likely to request pro bono support for changed? I'm curious which volunteer partnership are now you're most likely to dive into over the next few months. Yeah, I'm seeing some responses, some opinions have changed after learning about some of those like bedrock items. Yeah, still SEO. No, I mean, Jerry, that's a big one. That's why I spent so much time talking about that content marketing piece, because I really do feel like it's the lifeblood of many of the core initiatives throughout your marketing plan. Yeah. All right. So as folks are chiming in with some feedback, I'm going to get to some of the open questions. So I see a good question around what is good timing to make website updates every other month or every month? I'm about to give kind of a crappy answer here. It does depend. It depends the degree of website updates that you're considering. So, for example, I think that website design and the user experience of websites is just a field that's really rapidly advancing the accessibility of websites, making sure that all community members can make use of all of the content on your site. We've seen such rapid development in online accessibility. And so thinking through like larger scale website design and development upgrades, those you probably should think about every 1 to 2 years. If you're thinking about copy or like adding a new blog to your site or fiddling with some of the messaging on your homepage, that could be done on an ongoing basis where and when needed. However, I would recommend we have wonderful volunteers who are skilled in user experience, user interface design. And something that would be a good fit for a pro bono project with them is having a UX UI designer come in and actually do an audit of your website and make recommendations on ways that you can make your site more accessible, make recommendations on ways that you could better format your site to upgrade the user experience and make it easier for folks to get to the call to action, get to that action you want them to take, convert them into users of your programs or convert them into donors. That would be a great assessment to start with before you commit to a regular calendar of website updates. Another question here, should we create a marketing plan per stakeholder? It's a very good question. You should create one marketing plan for your organization, but it should include initiatives for your stakeholder types. Or your core initiative should have call outs for how that initiative will impact each of your stakeholders. So as an example, this is kind of a past organization. I was working with, it was another volunteerism group. And so volunteers was one of our core stakeholders, as well as local nonprofit organizations. And so one of our core initiatives was each year was National Volunteer Week. And so National Volunteer Week would be under my marketing plan's core priorities bucket. And so I know I want to conduct a really big campaign, a really big marketing push around National Volunteer Week. But how that impacts nonprofits in my community is going to be a lot different than how it impacts volunteers in my community. And so then I would list out some of the key activities that I would do for volunteers versus key activities I would do for nonprofits. So that's how I would differentiate between core stakeholders, not different marketing plans, one cohesive marketing plan, but specific call outs for how elements of your marketing plan impact stakeholders in different ways. And then I saw a quick question on, were survey respondents broken out by age group? So this is pertaining to that question around how folks want to learn about ways to support nonprofits. We did gather age information, and there was no significant difference between age groups. So email was the by far the top option for all age groups. We listed, or we had a question here around examples of core stakeholders. Hopefully you've gotten a few ideas throughout today's event. For nonprofits, I think our core stakeholders, the most common ones, are going to be program participants. And program participants vary based on the organization. So you do need to do some internal thinking on that one. So program participants, whoever they may be, your board members and staff members are going to be a core stakeholder group, your internal group, volunteers who support your organization, and funders who support your organization. Funders is another one that is going to vary based on the organization. I can share from the Taproot perspective, we have funders that are corporate, and we also have funders that are philanthropic. Those are two different stakeholders for us because they have different motivations. They have different ways they like to receive information. So those are two distinct stakeholders for us, even though they are both funders of our nonprofit. So hopefully that helps make a little bit more sense. Yes, I'm so glad, Savalis, you called that out. What about program participant family members? So actually, this is a great example. I worked with an organization who serves children whose caregivers are incarcerated. And so their core program participant was the children. However, they also offered networking and community building and resources to the newer caregivers of these children while their primary caregivers were in the penal system. So that was a great example of, we needed to break out this secondary participants group as another core stakeholder group and create some specific strategies to reach those caregivers in particular, in addition to the services for the children, which was the primary mission of the organization. So yes, Program participants, it's going to look different for every organization. So do a little bit of internal thinking and prioritization with your team on what those stakeholders are going to look like and be labeled for you. How often should emails be sent out? This is an interesting one. So emails, as I mentioned before, it should be an approach that goes beyond just we have one general newsletter that we send to all of our email lists all at the same time. If you have an email newsletter, first step, make sure you are updating your newsletter sign-up form to ask people about the type of stakeholder they are. So when they sign up to receive updates from your organization, give them options on, I want to learn more information about how to support XYZ organization, or I want to volunteer my skills to XYZ organization. I want to participate in the services of XYZ organization. Make those stakeholder delineations on that newsletter form, and that way you'll be able to better craft emails that go out to those specific groups. So that's, I know I didn't answer the how often should you be sending emails question. I'm taking it a little bit of a step back, but start with segmenting your email list first. Then your frequency of sending out communications will vary based on your stakeholder group. For example, I would never email donors as frequently as I would email program participants, just as an example, right? We want to be careful about the touch points we have with potential funders or donors, and be really, really targeted with our calls to action to them versus with our group of potential program participants. I want to make sure I am getting them outreach about every single opportunity we have available to them. So that way they can pick and choose which one is most valuable to them. So your email frequency should be determined by the stakeholder type, which we've talked a lot about at this point. So I'm going to jump to some of the other questions in the chat. Yes, I've used MailChimp before. They do offer a nonprofit discount. It's around 20%. So reach out to MailChimp, make sure your organization qualifies. Constant Contact also has a nonprofit discount. Yeah, and if other folks do have examples, please keep putting them in the chat. Those are the two that I've personally used myself. I probably like MailChimp a little bit more, but that's a personal preference. And in terms of email frequency, just one additional thought there, ask your stakeholders, right? Don't be afraid to ask them about how best can we communicate with you. We want to know your thoughts and opinions, right? You need to get, it's taking us back to one of those bedrock items, stakeholder interviews. You should be trying to collect as much data as possible on your community members. And so get comfortable asking them questions and creating lines of constant feedback with your community members. So it's the start of a new year, which is a great opportunity for you to reach out to an email list and say, hey, we want to do better when it comes to our email marketing this year. Give us ideas. How have we been doing well? How have we needed to improve? Give us your ideas for what you want to hear more of from us this next year. And the same thing goes for social media as well. All right, I know we are at the end of our official time, so I'm going to stay on for another 5 minutes or so in case we have some lingering questions. But if you do need to jump, please feel free. I know folks have a busy schedule today, so really, really appreciate you all taking the time to join. And we'll be in touch later, either this afternoon or tomorrow with the follow-up information. But if you do have more time, I'll stick around for another 5 minutes to keep working through some of these questions. All right, so I see a really interesting question on, do you think advisory boards would be stakeholders or kept at an arm's length? Ooh, the politics of board members and advisory boards and advisory councils. I know this is going to be a different question for every single organization on the line with us today. So take my response with a grain of salt. I do think an advisory board is part of your inner circle at your organization and would be a core stakeholder group that you need to keep in mind in your marketing plan, because you need to think about how your advisory plan is your advisory council or advisory board need to think about how they are acting as a promotional channel for you. One of their key jobs as an advisory board member or a council member should be being an advocate and ambassador for your organization. So they are a core stakeholder, yes, but you are also using them as a marketing tool. So 100%, my opinion is you should integrate them into your marketing plan. Don't keep them at an arm's length. Gather their feedback on how do you all believe you can contribute to our marketing this year? And then make the decision internally and then set expectations with them on this is what's expected from you. As an advisory board member, we expect you to do X, Y, Z. We expect you to participate in this big initiative or promoting this big event, promoting this big fundraiser, whatever the case may be. Build them into your marketing plan, set expectations with them. Can you recommend a way to analyze how effective use of Facebook is? So Facebook does have native analytics. So if you go into your organization's Facebook page, and you go into the analytics section, it does have some good stats there that you are able to export. So I do recommend making use of that tool because Facebook does have it available for free. They have some good data there. Also, if you use a tool that helps you schedule social media posts, that tool will also have analytic data available for you. So, for example, I've used tools such as Hootsuite or Buffer in the past, where you can use a buffer to schedule out a post on Facebook for next week, a post on LinkedIn for tomorrow. And then through Buffer, you can actually pull analytics reports that contains, your follower information, your reach information, your engagement rate information, all in one place. Some of those scheduling tools are free or do have nonprofit discounts. So Hootsuite, I believe, has a free version where you can link 2 social media channels. Buffer, I don't know if they have a free version, but they do have a substantial nonprofit discount. So that's something you can investigate as well. And then I'm seeing some feedback in the chat saying MetaSuite also works great. Yeah, so I would highly recommend, just going back to the original question, how to analyze effective use of Facebook. Start with Facebook's native analytics. Start there. See what posts and content your community members are really responding to and interacting with. Because Meta owns both Facebook and Instagram, through Facebook Analytics, you can also see Instagram stats, which is really helpful if you're on both channels. Yeah, and Federica, thank you for the tip too. Highly recommend Canva for nonprofits. There are so many uses for it. And as Federica just put in the chat, it does allow some connection with social media channels as well. So that's another tool you could leverage. Yes, Charlie, Canva is the best. I promise, Taproot, not sponsored by Canva, but I am a big fan. All right. I think I'm digging through the questions list, and I think I may have tackled at least all the ones that we've caught. But if you still have a question that's lingering, what we can commit to is there is an email on this slide. This is our help desk. So this is the email account that all of the Taproot Plus team members, including myself, are attached to. This is always going to be your fastest way to get in touch with a Taproot staff member. So help@taprootplus.org. However, we also will be sending out follow-up from this event. So the deck, the recording will include that upcoming webinar that I mentioned earlier, and a few other resources as well. And so you'll have our contact information from that you can always get in touch with us through. So we're hoping that this event is maybe the first step or the next step in your Taproot journey, but certainly not the last time we chat. So please let me know, let our team know what resources you could use going forward, which of these projects you want to get started on first, and what types of webinars would be helpful in the future. We want to do more events like this one. So please, all of the feedback is really helpful. All right. Thank you all for joining. I'm just reading all of these such kind messages in the chat. And I really do appreciate you all spending an hour with us today. And for everyone who's caught the recording, thanks for sticking around until now. Please never hesitate to reach out. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.